Tonight on the Your Life Matters Show podcast.
Well, I'm sorry, folks, when I answered this question, but we said we were going to be honest. Okay, what was one intentional choice you made to help you keep lonely? I wanted to have sex. Okay, I'm sorry that sounds that way, but you know what? I wanted that interaction, that intimacy with
Yeah.
somebody else, and we'll just leave it at that. So, I mean, I had that desire to be with someone else. I think if God forbid something were to happen between Jen and I, okay, I would still want that desire, even if it's not sexual, it's emotional.
Welcome, everyone. We're so glad you made the choice to watch our show this evening and joining us for another episode of the Your Life Matters Show podcast with your hosts Steve Hodgson and Dr. Eric L. Davis.
Loneliness isn't something most people expect to face in midlife. By this point, we're supposed to have it figured out. Careers, families, routines, responsibilities. But for many adults over 40, especially men, something feels missing. Not because they did something wrong, but because life changed. Kids grow up, relationships shift, careers slow down or end. The connections we once relied on quietly fade. Loneliness doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like silence. It's the feeling of being surrounded by people, yet feeling unseen. The sense that you're carrying things alone, because that's what you've always done. AARP found that in 2025, 40% of U.S. adults, age 45 and above, reported feeling lonely. 42% of men reported this, as well as 37% of women. Loneliness isn't just a senior issue. Middle age shows surprisingly high reported loneliness. Loneliness is tied to increased heart disease risk, cognitive decline, anxiety, depression, and worse overall health outcomes. Some research equates chronic loneliness to health effects similar to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Tonight, we're talking about loneliness, what it really is, why it shows up in midlife, and why so many men struggle in silence. Tonight's conversation isn't about weakness. It's not about being macho. It's about being human. And it's about reminding you of something important. Your story matters. Your mental health matters. Your life matters. And why? Oh, you are not alone. This is Your Life Matters Show podcast. Here are your hosts.
Howdy, and welcome to the Your Life Matters Show podcast. I'm your host, Steve Hodgson, and I'm here with my co-host, the Indiana Beard of Knowledge, Dr. Eric L. Davis. Dr. Davis, well, it's recording time. You guys are going to get swamped tonight.
Yeah. Supposed to get nailed by a big storm. So we'll
Yeah, I
see
mean,
what
anywhere
happens in
from like
Indiana.
12 to 18 inches or something
It
like
said,
that.
last I looked, it said like 6 to 10, I think, but
Okay.
it's,
It
I
depends.
don't
I know
know.
I looked up for Westport, because I still have a lot of friends there, and they had something like from 8 to 12 inches
Wow.
in their area that's there. And it's like, what? Yeah, I feel bad for you guys. But, like a post I put up, it was a picture that said, Florida isn't participating in winter this year.
I'm
And I
jealous.
say that, but yet I read something that Tuesday night, we're going back down to the 30s during the night.
Yeah.
So it's like the third time, and I apologize to anyone that has seen the Sam. Well, they haven't seen the Sam interview. That will be next week. But if I looked a little out of it, I was heavily medicated with a head cold for that. So today, knock on wood, I haven't had to heavily medicate myself yet. So, but that's from Florida's 30, 40-degree weather that we
Wow.
got. Yeah, it was nice.
I'd settle for that today because it's
Well, I
7
know.
degrees is what it says here.
Now, one of the visions of this show is to reach out and help people who are in need of assistance. Now, many people still face that stigma of seeking help and possibly being seen going into the office. We talked about this the last time. People can be judgmental. Well, there's good news for you. and that you can get help and counseling right from the privacy of your own home on your PC or laptop. Waypost Counseling, our proud sponsor, offers this treatment as an option. So let's watch what they have to say.
There are moments in life when you look around and think, how did I get here? The stress, the heartbreak, the habits you never meant to build, sometimes it all piles up until you don't even know where to start. But you don't have to find your way alone. At Waypost Counseling, you'll find people who genuinely listen. People who walk with you, not ahead of you. Founded by Dr. Eric L. Davis and therapist Erin Davis, Waypost was created for anyone who needs a safe place to breathe again. They offer support for individuals, couples, addiction, and those painful life transitions that shake your foundation. And now, with Jeff Gassior, a problem gambling peer support specialist, clients can connect with someone who's been there. Someone who understands the fight and the hope that comes after it. And maybe the hardest part isn't admitting you need help, it's figuring out how to start. That's why Waypost makes counselling accessible from anywhere. Whether you're sitting at your kitchen table, on your couch after a long day, or in a quiet corner where you finally feel safe, you can meet with a therapist face-to-face through secure online sessions. You don't have to fight traffic, rearrange your entire schedule, or force yourself into a waiting room when you're already overwhelmed. Help can meet you right where you are. There's something powerful about being able to speak your truth from the comfort of your own space. With Waypost's online counselling, distance is never a barrier. Whether you live across Indiana or on the other side of the country, you can connect with Dr. Davis, Erin, or Jeff in a private, compassionate, judgment-free environment. For many people, that first step feels less intimidating when it happens at home, and sometimes that makes all the difference. If you're tired, if you're hurting, if you're ready for change, reach out. Visit waypostcounseling.com or call 317-762-0904 or 317-659-0179. Waypost Counseling. When life feels heavy, let someone help you carry it. Make the call today.
Now, loneliness. It's a word we usually associate with old age. Yes, but the data is telling us a very different story. Recent research from AARP shows that adults age 40 and over, now remember that's 40 and over, not 65, 70 or over, and especially men, are experiencing loneliness at alarming rates. In fact, many people in midlife report feeling more lonely now than they ever experienced at any stage of their life. And this isn't about being alone. It's about feeling unseen, disconnected, quietly carrying that weight while still showing up for work, family, and daily responsibilities. So tonight we're going to ask a very important question. Why is loneliness rising amongst adults 40 and over? And why does it hit men so hard? Now we'll explore what loneliness really is, how it differs from social isolation, why midlife can be such a vulnerable season, and what that mental health consequences can look like when loneliness goes unaddressed. Now let me ask you guys, have you ever felt alone in a room full of people? Do you struggle to put words to that sense of disconnection? Or do you know someone who might be quietly battling loneliness? If so, this conversation is for you. Now, this is the podcast where your story matters, your mental health matters, and more importantly, as you know, your life matters. And we want you to know you're not alone. So, Dr. Davis, when people hear that word loneliness, they often picture some elderly person sitting at home by themselves. That is loneliness, but from a clinical perspective, why are we seeing such high levels of loneliness in adults 40 and over?
I think because, I'm in my 40s. I'm in my late 40s. I'll be 49 this year. But I know for me, we are at that our generation really is where, like technology kind of took off and really changed how society is laid out and all that stuff. So the beginning of our life was kind of, we were connected by phone, things like that, but no email, no internet. Working from home was not really a thing. And now, those things are the norm where, in the past, you had to physically be around people, usually to connect with others. Now you do that through social media and other things, and it's different. And I think that has a big part of it.
I actually said to someone the other day, when I was growing up, parents had to go nuts to get us to come home.
Mhm.
Okay. And now today, parents are going nuts trying to get their kids to go out. Okay.
Yeah,
They stay inside. Their communication, like you say, with their friends and everything is over the computer.
yeah,
Whereas before it was face to face, that bonding that we did
yeah.
with people. And it's a different kind of bonding today. I even don't think that bonding is as strong.
Yeah, I think there's bonding, but it's not a community bonding,
Right. Hmm.
so it's like smaller person to person bonding, but there's nothing more powerful than a community bond.
Right.
So, but technology has changed everything, really has.
Yeah. Now, before we go any further, can you help us clarify something that's really important? What's the difference between being alone, social isolation, and feeling lonely?
So being alone means that you're physically alone. Nobody else is around. Feeling alone, we have the ability to feel alone even in a packed baseball game, or everyone has that ability to basically feel disconnected even in the midst of tons of connection. Um, and then what was the last one you were asking
Social
about?
isolation.
Oh, social isolation. That also has to do with like feeling lonely and those things where even if we're socially active, but there's not a lot of social connection, that can be social isolation, where basically people will find that they kind of see that all of their relationships are what's the word I'm looking at? Surface level,
Right. Yeah.
you know, where there's no like real emotional connection or anything.
And I think we all probably know people that don't want to go out, that don't like,
Yeah.
to go places. I
That's
mean, when
me
we were
today.
younger, it was like going to the clubs and stuff like that. But I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, I get older age, sometimes you're just tired and you've worked and you don't have that energy. I mean, I don't have the energy I had when I was in my 20s. I mean, heck, I
Yeah.
used to stay, there was a club in New York called the Ritz. And I used to work all day. I worked an 8-hour day, went home, had dinner, changed clothes, went to the Ritz and stayed till 4 in the morning when they closed the clubs.
Hmm.
Okay. Walked home. It was about a mile to my house, slept for an hour or two, got up, took a shower, and went to work again. Just thinking about it, I want to take a nap
Hmm.
today.
Yeah.
And we just don't have that anymore. But I think, like we were talking about with electronics and stuff, people still think, well, you know what? I got TV.
Yeah.
I got the internet. I got the Your Life Matters Show podcast I can watch.
Mhm.
I don't need to go out, and I think that's becoming a big problem.
Mhm.
So does loneliness tend to show up differently in midlife than it really does in earlier adulthood?
I think so. I think that, there's like the midlife crisis type
Oh
thing
yeah,
where, a person will be really self-judge, judge their self, like basically judging our insides by everybody else's outsides. Um, but I really do think that I've really like with individuals that men I work with, or just people that I know. I mean, really, I think it's a different the loneliness epidemic, so to speak, that we're kind of experiencing is a new, like it's new. It's a little different than ever before, I think.
now there's a question I just thought of, and I watched a lot of we've said many times I watch a lot of YouTube research and stuff, AI, isn't AI going to make that even worse?
Probably. I mean that, if I had to predict, probably.
Yeah.
I mean, I hope not.
Well,
But
and when I think about it, we're not going to, AI is, they say, is going to do away with jobs. It's going to
mhm,
automate stuff. So that's even less interaction that we have with
yeah,
people, whether it be mass transit in your car at work, lunchtime,
yeah.
when you go down to the diner or something to get lunch or deli, all that stuff you're taking away.
Mhm,
I mean, we've already gotten to the point where you can order your groceries online. It gets delivered to your house.
yeah.
And you don't even have to deal with the person who delivered it. They'll leave it right on your doorstep.
It's true.
I mean, it's gotten to that point where we're just not interacting with other people.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's intentional or what that's going on. But the data suggests that men are reporting loneliness at higher rates. So, from your experience and your practice, why do men struggle more with loneliness and often struggle in silence?
I think part of it has to do with just, like the concept being a man, like,
Macho.
we're socialized, right or wrong, we're socialized, generally speaking, growing up that, men are strong, independent. We don't need to ask for help, and, I can handle it on my own, and I protect my family, like all those things where for, to say, let me share this. One of my favorite things that I talk about with the men I work with is we talk about how, like the irony isn't lost on me that, that's what I tell them. I say, hey, you were brought up, you're supposed to be strong, independent, don't show emotion, you have to be unwavering, all these things. And then you come to therapy with Eric, and I'm like, we need to talk about your feelings. And, are you lonely? Like all these things, like it goes against so many of those things that I was socialized to do, quote unquote, as a man.
Right,
And so I think that probably it's it may be a blow to our pride to admit that we're lonely.
right. Yeah, and I think you've said we talked about this, even the episode where I think where your wife Erin was on
Mhm,
about couples that men just don't want to discuss that stuff
mhm.
because of that macho thing. I don't have a problem,
Yeah.
and I mean, think about, you know, our parents or I think more our grandparents' generation, they wouldn't even smile in pictures.
Yeah. I know.
I mean, that macho image of, it's
Hmm.
like smile. I am smiling. Smile. Okay.
I'm so happy.
Yes, exactly. It just, I, it's amazing the world that we're starting to see more and more of that, and yet I'm seeing a little change, but in that men persona,
Mhm.
a little bit with the younger generation, Gen Z.
Yeah.
Okay, and I mean, I actually watched the Gen Z interview through the other night, and I hadn't seen it since we had recorded it. And yeah, and I see a lot of changes just in that generation.
Yeah.
So maybe this adult loneliness, middle-aged stuff in 10, 15 years is not going to exist.
Yeah.
Who knows? Though they have so many other problems and fears that they're worrying about
Yeah.
and anxiety. So, you know, I don't know. What are some of the warning signs that a man might be lonely if he appears fine on the outside?
I think if you just are noticing a change, like if you see that a man is just isolated all the time, which that's not all, some people just like being alone. And I'm not talking about those individuals.
Right.
I'm talking about the person that's usually social, usually would hang out with their friends all the time. And then, part of that is our social connections kind of shrink with age, which is part of just what happens. But if they're not interacting with anybody ever, they're probably lonely. They probably are lonely. So
And they
I
can
think
even
that.
be married, and we'll even get into that. They can be married and lonely too,
Mhm. Yeah.
and a lot of times, I'm sorry, the wife, can't go out to the bar, and stuff like that with you guys. Sorry, can't go for a drink. The wife will throw a fit. And it's easy just to use that excuse. And
Mhm.
guys, anyone that's married probably will understand that.
Yeah.
It's
Uh-huh.
not worth the drink, okay, to have to deal with that and to hang out. So I understand some of it, but now when life changes in midlife, it tends to trigger loneliness, things like career shifts,
Mhm.
divorce, kids leaving home, health issues, or retirement. You know, what are those changes that trigger all of that?
I think a big part of like typically what we see with, like loneliness or when things get problematic, I guess, is with big life shifts. So, a lot of times with individuals who have, kids who are college age moving out of the house and they go from, having kids at home to,
Empty nest.
especially if it's a single child family, they go from that child being the star of the show 24/7 basically to now, so we see a lot of things in times like that where there's life shifts or, and part of the thing too now is there are lots of changes happening in the world, just all over. I mean, everywhere you look, there are changes taking place. And, we have a word for that. We call it adjustment disorder, where, and like an example would be if if someone's house is broken into, and obviously that's scary. If
Mhm.
anyone's ever had their house broken into, that's really scary. It's like, oh no, who was here? And you feel violated, all this weird stuff. And then if a person, has trouble sleeping for, a while after that, a lot of times that could be attributed to an adjustment disorder, which means, well, they were fine before, but now they've had this experience or these things have changed and they're just having a hard time adapting to that.
Yeah, and they're more worried, is that person going to break in again?
Yeah.
That
I mean,
keep
and
all
that would
those
be a real
thoughts run
fear,
through their heads. Yeah. Okay, what if he found an extra key or something like that?
Hmm.
Or he found my PIN
Yeah.
numbers and he's just waiting to take all my
Mhm.
information. Yeah, your mind can really start to play. Um, so how much does identity loss play into loneliness? When someone's sense of purpose, let's say, was tied to their job,
Hmm.
family role, or even being needed, and
Yeah.
now that doesn't exist anymore.
The same type of thing where the dynamics change, where um, our sense of self is, I would challenge anybody watching this, just kind of pause the video for a moment and think about, like, really think in your mind, who am I? Like, what defines who I am? And for most people, it's, the family I come from, the state I live in, what I do for a living, whether I'm married or not, whether just all these different things. And then imagine that, one of those big things instantly changes overnight. That if everything ends up kind of looking different. And so identity is tied up, I mean, big time. I've had friends that, like who were musicians who, that's what they did for a living. They were on tour, they playing shows and that they loved that. And then, either the tour ends or the band breaks up or they have to quit the band. And it's like, they're kind of left thinking, who am I? Like, well, wait a minute, this is who I was and I knew how to be this, but who am I now? And I mean, honestly, when I changed my career, when I was, when I sold Life Recovery Center, which was my business, I went through a lot of that because I had spent 20 years of being me from there. And then it's like, well, who am I now? I'm still me. It's me somewhere else. But I mean, I still struggle with that, I think, at times, where it's like I'll have like a reservation about it, but it's like, no, like I'm okay, I'm okay. I'm still me. Like life is good, but our identity really is tied to so many things and even a lot of things we probably don't think about.
And it's probably happening more and more today with, and this is in politics with the economy, but with the
Hmm.
economy being the way they are, there's a lot of people being laid off, businesses that are closing.
Yeah.
And someone who's been, like in your case, like the CEO of a company, and
Yeah.
now it's not your company anymore.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
that
I'm the CEO of a much smaller company.
right, exactly. Yeah, but I see it, someone who's worked for, 20 years
Yeah.
as an accountant for someplace, and now suddenly is out of a job.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
don't know what to do with themselves anymore.
Hmm.
And it's like, but wait a minute, I was that breadwinner. I
Yeah.
was that person that went out every day, went to work, put a roof over my family's heads, fed everybody, the pets, everybody was happy. And
Yeah.
now all of a sudden I'm out of work.
Yeah. Or think of this. All of the sudden, what I have been doing to sustain to take care of everybody and
Hmm.
sustain them for X amount of time is, like it almost when the economy changes, it's like, wait a minute, that's not good enough anymore. Like, wait a second, this effort isn't enough. Like, I mean, that's really scary.
Yeah, and I get, that I've seen posts from people on like Facebook, social media about, the price of wire. Actually, my brother-in-law, okay, is an electrician,
Hmm.
and he was talking about the price of Romex wire in the last two or 3 years has gone up like almost triple what it costs.
Yeah.
And this is like, and we got to pass that on to the consumer, and the consumer is, all upset
Mhm.
over the cost. And I get that, I don't blame one particular party for it,
Yeah.
but it just, when you start to research the stuff like I did with that, it's like COVID and then all this other stuff, nothing is reversing and things are just getting more expensive,
Yeah.
and you can't even support your family anymore, even on your job, and it's like everyone's looking at you and you're like, what do you want me to do?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I can see people starting to withdraw into themselves,
Yeah.
because they start to fear, and even with AI, it's just going to destroy my job. Am I even going to be needed anymore? So now I know we touched very lightly on it, but now we'll go into it. Can someone be married, working full time, socially active, and still be deep lonely inside?
Absolutely. Yeah. But it's all about connection, and obviously, like, I'm married. I know probably several people watching this are married. Marriage is never just like this. It's never just, well, I mean,
No.
it's this, just like life is. And so there, definitely my wife, Erin, which if you've watched the show, you've seen her before, there are times when we're extremely connected. And then, we have periods where it's just she has major things going on or I do, and it's just we're not as connected as we were. But that connection is so important. I mean, that connection to your closest friends, closest allies, your family. I mean, that's so important to our mental health. It really is.
There has to be someone that you can turn to also when
Absolutely.
your spouse isn't there. So when loneliness goes unaddressed, what kind of mental health challenges can develop or even worsen?
I think, a lot of times a sense of hopelessness, because when a person is isolated, they're basically in an echo chamber of their own thinking, and that's why if you think about having a hard day, and you reach out to one of your best friends, it's like, man, can I tell you what happened today? And you just talk about it. A lot of times that friend will, man, that's really awful. I hate that for you. Or, well, man, this happened to me. It's like people can relate, can support each other. And if I'm alone all the time, I'm not getting any external support.
Yeah, and that's, you live in your mind at
Yeah.
that point, and your mind takes, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the way we're wired, but we always put the worst scenarios
Yeah.
in our head, it's
Yeah.
why.
I always say like thinking is as powerful as anything else. Where I ask the question, I say, okay, who runs faster? A man who's being chased by a pack of wolves or a man who thinks he's being chased by a pack of wolves?
Mhm.
They're both running as fast as they can because that's the reality in the moment. That's their perception. So,
See, you always got to think positive, and we'll even touch on that a little more in the next part of the interview here. So, do you see loneliness contributing to anxiety, depression, or even substance use, which really
Absolutely.
hadn't even talked about? And
Yeah, absolutely. Just, as far as being isolated, like during COVID, the substance use rates went through the roof, gambling rates went through the roof,
Mhm.
drinking rates, all of those things because um, I think it's just, it's trying to feel connected to something or it's trying to get a dopamine hit or,
Right.
um, so absolutely loneliness is tied to all of those things for sure.
Yeah. And I think even Jeff talked about that, where how much it increased during COVID.
Yeah.
When you just, you're home, you're doing nothing.
Like what else is there to do,
Yeah. I mean, I find myself sometimes sitting at home, when my wife's at work and stuff, I'm sitting here and I just stop playing. I don't gamble. I just play like solitaire, those
Mhm.
kind of card games. And suddenly look at the clock and realize I've been sitting there for an hour and a half
Yeah.
playing card games. And it's like, what am I doing? There's 1,000 things I could be doing except sitting here playing
Mhm.
cards. But yeah, and if you had no place else to go and nothing else to do, because you can't go out, you're stuck inside the house. And that's why
Yeah.
the little joke that's going around now for you guys is, be careful who you take home tonight because you may be stuck with them for a few days
Yeah.
with the snow that's coming in. So, how does chronic illness affect self-esteem and how people view their own self-worth?
You know, it's people judge their self based, as compared to others, and that's so unfair to ourselves. Like if basically, if we see someone and they're surrounded by people all the time and all that, like even if we wouldn't want that to be us, sometimes we see that and we think, well, if I were better, that's what it'd be like for me. Or, and I always just call it judging my insides by everybody else's outsides. Um, if I don't ever get any feedback from others, then I'm basically just left to kind of try and judge how I'm doing um, with no bar set, kind of. So, I mean, I just think that, chronic loneliness definitely makes a person feel worse, because they're alone.
It's that old saying, the grass is always greener on the other side of the fence.
Yeah.
Okay, but you to realize that you may be debt free, and they may have two cars and
Hmm.
a big patio set and a pool and everything else, but they probably owe about 100,000 in credit cards and in debt, and you're debt free. You just
Yeah.
don't know. Your brain is just going to do things. So now we're going to go to a different part of the conversation.
And now for something completely different.
Okay, so we spent a lot of time so far on the show talking about loneliness, what it looks like, why it happens, and how it could quietly take hold, especially in midlife. But today we're going to do something a little different. See, we said this year we're going to bring guests on to every episode.
Mhm.
Well, we are going to bring guests on right now, and you're looking at them right now. We're going to step into that space ourselves. Now, some of you may or may not know, both Dr. Davis and I have lived through divorce. Both of us have known seasons where life changed in ways we didn't plan, where routines shifted, identities were questioned, and loneliness could have taken root. And yet, we didn't let those seasons define us. We didn't let loneliness become the ending of our stories. Now, in this segment, we're not here to give advice or pretend it was easy. We're simply reflecting, and it's going to be honest reflection on what helped us move forward, how we stayed grounded, and how we eventually found new love, connection, and fulfillment again. Now, we share this not because our stories are special and not because we want to show off, because it's real. The more I thought about who we would bring on for this interview, it's like, as you would do at home. Okay, it's probably a good way of putting it. If you're sitting at home and you're watching a story, one of our guests gone, you're doing what we're doing. You're picturing yourself in that situation, or like we said with Sam that you'll see next week, how, we all could pick out parts of the stories
Yeah.
and connect with them. So Dr. Davis and I sit there and we do the same things when our guests are talking. Our the back of our heads are going. So we said, well, you know what? Okay, let's put our minds forward
Yeah.
and not bring somebody else on this time. And not that we don't want guests. Trust me, I got guests lined up for next couple of months right now. But we just wanted to do something a little different.
Yeah.
Um, so instead of interviewing each other, we thought we'd take a few questions and reflect them on them together. So in other words, we're gonna read a question. Then I'll let Dr. Davis go first, and then I'll answer next one. Then I'll go first, and vice versa. Okay. So the first thing is like the moments that changed when life shifted after divorce. What surprised you most about that season?
I think what surprised me most was, it provided some clarity for me as far as, what, basically what I wanted versus what I needed, and, it was difficult, but I think that for me, it was just putting one foot in front of the other, learning to love myself again, those things. I think that's probably what surprised me the most was that I think a lot of times I was scared to be alone, but then when I was alone and I actually took the time to take care of me, and make sure that I was taking care of my needs, making sure I was okay emotionally, all that, it, everything got better. That was probably a big one for me.
See, I agree with myself. Some of that was the same. It was adapting to being alone. I
Yeah.
think I feared, we just talked about in your mind,
Hmm.
you're envisioning the worst, and it's like, oh crap, okay, I'm gonna
Yeah.
be, now what? Okay, now I'm gonna have to cook, I'm gonna have to clean, I'm gonna do dishes, everything. Okay,
Yeah.
well, I do most of that stuff married now anyway, but but I think in my head, what surprised me the most was that I allowed myself to have time for myself,
Yeah.
which I hadn't really done. It was time for us, and it
Hmm.
was never a time for Steve.
Yeah.
And being alone after the divorce actually allowed me to say, hey, wait a minute, what floats my boat, as they say, what
Yeah.
was it that, I enjoyed doing music was
Hmm.
my answer. Okay, for me,
Yeah.
okay, 'cause I enjoyed playing. I immediately went back to writing
Hmm.
and playing my guitars and my keyboards and
Yeah.
all the bass.
Honestly, something that I remember I was playing on the worship team at a church,
Hmm.
around
I
that
remember that.
time. And
Yep.
that was a really positive, very emotionally helpful, like honestly, because I just, like they knew what I was going through and loved me through it, honestly. I mean, like my friends, my family, the members of the church, there were so many amazing people around me that, it was like, hey, like something really rough is going on, but we love you anyway. And that meant the world.
See,
That
in
that
my
changed
case, I moved
everything.
to a different state,
Hmm.
so I didn't have
Yeah.
my friends around me. Okay, I had person who I had met out there, their friends around me, and no matter how much Aaron's friends are great friends with you, but they're not your friends.
Yeah. It makes me think do you ever watch Curb Your Enthusiasm?
Yes, yeah,
Okay, did you ever see the one where Larry and Cheryl get divorced and Larry goes to the coffee shop or whatever, and I think it's Ted Danson is in there and he's like, Larry, I don't really know how to tell you this, but we're going with Cheryl.
yeah, yeah.
It's like, hey.
Well, you see that luckily, I was very conscious not to pit friends, against that making a
Yeah.
choice. Do what you want. But again, it just seemed like the people who were your friends stayed with you, and the people who were really her friends stayed with her.
Yeah.
And moving to a different state was interesting. I had to get a new job,
Yeah.
meet all new people and stuff. But I don't know. I reached down and I know because I read through these right before we started to do the interview here. Okay, so I didn't get shocked, okay, with having to come up with an answer and being like some of oh wow, that's a good one.
Hmm.
Um, you know, I myself was determined within myself that I was not going to let the divorce define who I was.
Yeah.
Okay, and I was going to now take a few minutes and sit back and figure out who I was again. What did I enjoy doing that I stopped doing? And
Yeah.
that's what I say with the music. I mean, I enjoyed writing,
Yeah.
okay, but I had stopped writing. Okay, after we broke up, I mean, I wrote 3 albums worth of material. Okay, just
Hmm.
being there on my own, living alone. I mean, I was living in Amish country. I mean, you
Hmm.
want to talk about being alone? I was on Amish farm. Okay, that was it. You were alone. I
Yeah.
was in a town that, there was farms. I mean, Amish farms. That's all it was. And but I got used to it
Yeah.
and adapted to it. And you know what? I came out a better, stronger person. I
Yeah.
honestly believe than I would
Be,
have.
be, something that it makes me think of is I think like something that I really learned from that is being alone isn't always a bad thing.
Hmm.
Like really being alone is only a bad thing if I'm using the time to, listen to negative self-talk, if I'm beating myself up over things, I mean like, but when we use the time to pursue what we want, or to improve ourselves or whatever, like if you use the alone time to make things better for you, I think that was a big eye opener for me. It was just like, actually, this is kind of a gift. It's time for me, like, where I don't have to worry about anybody else, and I can focus on what I need to do right now or what I want to change.
Well, one of the things that the only last thing I'll say in this, I'll move to the next one, is addiction.
Hmm.
Okay, one of the things that I was doing a lot of towards the end of my marriage was cocaine.
Hmm.
Okay, I mean, you know, I was drinking. Yeah, I drank a lot of wine, but though I could put down the wine anytime. But I was smoking pot. I was doing coke. I was basically just getting messed up. I was unhappy where I was, and the time alone afterwards, I'm very, I think a lot, which is a good or a bad thing. As a business owner, it was a very good thing to think a
Yeah.
lot. But I started to question after a while, why was I doing all of that?
Hmm.
Okay, what was it that sparked me into, you know, I mean, really becoming almost like an addict after a while? And it was because I was unhappy.
Hmm.
And I noticed that it happened again after my next relationship, where all of a sudden I started, picking up pot and stuff and started doing it.
Hmm.
And luckily, I think I only did coke once, okay, because I really had been out of that and really didn't want to do that.
Hmm.
Um, but I realized that that was my coping mechanism
Yeah.
of dealing with that. So whenever, even to like this very day, I mean, I haven't had the thought, but if I know in my head, if I start thinking about, hell, you know what? I think I'll just want to smoke a joint or, do a
Hmm.
couple of lines. Hell, I live in Florida. I can get that legally if I want to. Okay. But I know in my head, if I want to go that route, there's
Hmm.
something wrong. And I need to
Yeah.
pay attention to what's wrong first. Deal
Yeah.
with that. And then if I still want to do that, we'll deal with that issue later
One
on.
a dear friend of mine, John Phillips. He's no longer with us, unfortunately, but John Phillips, one of my dearest friends of my entire life, my musical soulmate, no
Mhm.
question about it. Something he said, years ago that always stuck with me is I remember I was going through a bunch of relationship stuff, and he goes, "Hey, Davis, until you're okay being alone, you'll never be okay with anybody else."
Yep.
And I just remember that like really resonated with me. And it was like there was part of me was kind of like, well, who the heck does he think he's, or whatever. And it was like, no, wait, you know what? Like he's come, that's my friend. He's coming from a place of love, and what he said was true. And so I really did, before I met Erin, my wife, now, I really had like I stopped dating. I I just took some time for me. I took a couple of months for me just to focus on what I wanted to do and take care of me and kind of evaluate my life. And then I met her, and the rest is history.
I still think even with a marriage, you have to be okay with being alone. Like right now, you were telling me before we went on the air that Erin's away right now on
Yeah,
vacation
yeah,
in Mexico. Okay. And you know, right now Jen is at work.
yeah,
Okay. And when we talk about work, understand folks, she works a 12-hour day and then there's hour commute. So she's gone like 14 hours,
yeah.
13, 14 hours. She's gone. Okay. That's 3 days in a row. Like this week, we're talking about Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Okay.
Mm,
I'm here by myself. Okay. Well, the
yeah,
pets, but you know what I'm talking
yeah,
about. Here by ourselves. If I wasn't okay with being alone,
mhm,
okay, that would cause like serious problems.
yeah.
Actually, I think a lot of married people would say they enjoy being
Mhm.
that time where
Well,
they get alone.
the reality is like people think that intimacy means sex, but
Mhm.
that's not really what it means. What true intimacy looks like would be if if I'm a circle and Aaron's a circle, it looks like this.
Right.
It's just two overlapping circles. There's her, there's me, and then there's us. And the reason it's like this is because unhealthy relationships look like that or like this, or,
Hmm.
like there's it. So the definition of intimacy is a shared identity with with two separate individualities intact. So
Right.
what that means is that my alone time and me knowing who I am and me working through my thinking and my processes and doing what I need to do is as important to that relationship as the time we spend together and
Right.
vice versa. So like um being, if if you can be okay being alone, honestly, it can make relationships a ton better. That's been my experience.
Oh, without a doubt. Now, the second question on here, it's talking about loneliness versus being alone. What helped you recognize the difference between being alone and feeling lonely? I guess so. I'll take the first one this
Yeah, go
time.
ahead.
Okay. I don't know if I ever felt lonely during the time that I was alone because I mean you know me, I'm an outgoing person.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I've already made friends with three, four of the neighbors living around me. Okay. I'm just one, if I'm standing outside, that's how I met my neighbors. They were
Mhm.
standing outside. Hey, how you doing? And just, some
Yeah.
people look at what the hell? Okay. But you know what? I'm just a very outgoing person. And I don't think I would feel lonely because even at work, when I moved to Pennsylvania, I still had coworkers. Now, I usually don't like to hang out with coworkers, especially if you're their boss. It's different
Mhm.
if you work with
Yeah.
them because unless it takes a very different group of workers to understand that, when I'm hanging out at the bar or something with you, or hanging out, going to the movies or to a play, that I'm Steve. But
Mhm.
when I'm inside there, I'm boss Steve.
Yeah.
Okay. And there's a fine line there. You can find a lot of people that understand that. Okay,
Mhm.
but you also know that there are some that, hey, this is a guy that was, downing melon balls the other night. Okay, and
Yeah.
now he's selling
Yeah.
them. Yeah. So we got to be careful of stuff like that. But I don't think I enjoyed being alone.
Mhm.
Um, I'm not 100% sure today if I enjoy too much of being. I enjoy being alone a little bit because the solitude, the silence,
Yeah.
and it's just a joke when I say there's no bitching going on. Being told to do this. I enjoy. I'll get to, and when I
Yeah.
get to it, I don't mean 6 months from now, but it doesn't mean I'm going to get to it right now. So, I don't think I ever felt really lonely. But I know that there's a difference where there's people sitting there saying, God, I'm a failure.
Mhm.
Nobody wants to be around me. And I
Yeah.
wish there was someone sitting right here with me right now that, I could talk to
Yeah.
and stuff. You know what? I made enough friends that I could pick up the phone and
Mhm.
talk to someone. And I also didn't need to wait 6 months to a year to find
Yeah.
somebody else to go out with.
Mhm.
I think a lot. As I said, I'm a practical person. Life goes on.
Mhm.
I hate to say, well, oh well, but that moved on. Next chapter,
Yeah.
the next volume of the book. Okay, let's start writing
Yeah.
and keep going forward. I watch old people, and we talk about loneliness. Where I was living in that retirement community, that 65 and over, where people, when a spouse or something passed away
Yeah.
or they got divorced, they were like, well, I'm just going to live the rest of my life this way. And it's like, no, you're choosing to live the rest of your life that way.
Yeah.
There is so much to do and so many places to go, so much to see. We even had Love Inc. Do you remember?
Yeah.
I actually got an email from them. They're opening a store today, another store right out
Wow.
here in Bellevue here. Um, that's what made me think of them. But
Yeah.
remember, she said, everybody got together and they did stuff. They
Yeah.
worked in a store to help you. Go out, do something.
Mhm.
Don't sit at home because you know what? You're not feeling lonely. You're feeling sorry for yourself.
Yeah.
To me, that's what loneliness is. It's feeling sorry for yourself.
Mhm.
Because I think you could go out and just break that. You may not find your true love right away, but you know what? You go out and have some fun. And I'm
Yeah.
not talking sexually either. I'm talking
Yeah.
about just go out and have some fun.
Just socialize. Just go out and talk to people, meet people.
So what helped you recognize the difference?
I think I remember there was one night I remember I was home alone. This is when I was single. So I was home alone and I remember um like I had rented a movie, like rented some movie I wanted to see or whatever. And I remember I had called like a girl I was dating at the kind of seeing at the time or whatever, and like, hey, I've got this movie. You want to go and watch it? Just I'm just hanging out here. And she couldn't or whatever. And I just remember it was just like I same type of thing. I started really feeling sorry for myself. And then it was nobody wants to hang out with me and I'm not good enough. And like that's just kind of where my thinking defaults to, um, if I'm not aware of it. And it just kind of occurred to me. I remember I was like, you know what? I can watch this movie by myself and like, is it really that I have to have somebody here with me right now to enjoy the movie? And it was like, no. So I just remember looking at it as kind of trying something new. Like, you know what? Let's just go with it. I'm alone right now. Let's go with this. Let's see. And really, being willing to take some alone time is really, that's been one of the healthiest things that I've ever done, really. Even to this day.
And I think everybody should take some time. I'm not saying go on separate
Yeah.
vacations, type of stuff like that, but you see, with Jen and I, one of the things that we were doing everything together. People
Mhm.
even we had the PPI jackets, that we used to wear all the time. But you sell, here comes frickin' frack, okay, which is,
Yeah.
you even dress alike, it's like I got jeans and sneakers and a jacket. Okay, so that's I dress like 100 people. Okay, but we would do all our hobbies and everything were together. And
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with that.
No.
But I think at a certain point too, you need to have something, if you're doing that, you turn off a couple of the things that you like to do
Yeah.
too, and that shouldn't be. Like, you know what? I stopped playing music,
Mhm.
okay, and I shouldn't have done that. Okay, I should have continued playing music, but she wasn't a part of that.
Yeah.
So, I and where I thought of that was once we went back to Connecticut to visit friends that were there. and
Yeah.
my friend Mike, who was the best man at our wedding, and he was my guitarist for years. And we were there, and he's like, "Hey," he says, let's go down to the band room, and just jam for a couple hours."
Yeah.
Okay, and it's like, okay, and we knew we were going to do that, so we were driving. I actually brought my bass with me, okay, because I wanted to use my bass when I went down there, and my little book, of music, my little cheat notes book, and we played for about 3 hours in the studio. I got the drummer, to show
Yeah.
up because we were three-piece, and we jammed for like about 2 or 3 hours, and when I went back to the hotel that night, I mean, I was on a cloud, because I was doing something that I enjoyed doing,
Yeah.
and then went and just locked in the closet. I mean, I say that now as I got guitars hanging all around me on walls here, but you know what? They're wall art almost right now, which is
Yeah.
really sad. I mean, they're not, I picked up my guitar when I took it out of the case when I moved to this house and made sure it was tuned and put it back up on the wall.
Hmm.
Dusted it off and put it on the wall. And that's sad because it's something I enjoy doing and I'm
Yeah.
not doing. And I think we all need to take that time apart and do
Yeah.
what we enjoy doing.
We
Like you have
do.
like Erin's on vacation right now.
Yeah.
With her friends. Allow that to happen.
Yeah. Honestly, like it like she is gonna have fun. Like they're having a blast. She's
Hmm.
having fun. Um, I'm here taking care of things at the house. I'm working a little bit. I'm here with the pets. Like I think that's wonderful because the other thing too that people don't think about is if we do everything together all the time, what the hell do we have to talk about?
Hmm.
It's like, hey, remember that time when we were doing whatever? Oh yeah. And it's just kind of like, but like that's part of the fun is I'm excited to hear about her trip, and the fun they had and those things.
So I think when you're together all the time, you get on each other's nerves
Yeah.
after a while. If that's all you do
Yeah.
is right on top of it.
I could probably handle being around her all the time, but she'd never be able to handle being
Right.
around me all the time because I drive her nuts.
I think we drive each other nuts here, so I think that's fine. So okay, let's go to number three,
All right.
preventing that spiral. What was the one intentional choice you made that helped keep loneliness from becoming isolating? Now, that gave me a second part, or to rephrase it, who or what helped you stay grounded when things felt uncertain?
Do you want me to answer
Yeah,
first?
you're first this time.
Um, Honestly, I think that honing in on the things that were really important to me, like I mean, really, I focused on, my professional relationships. I focused on, work. I focused on my clients, and I made sure like I was playing music, um, and just making sure that I was doing things that kept me grounded, basically that reminded me who I am, while I kind of figured out the other parts.
Well, I'm sorry, folks, when I answered this question, but we said we were going to be honest. Okay, what was one intentional choice you made to help you keep lonely? I wanted to have sex. Okay, I'm sorry that sounds that way, but you know what? I wanted that interaction, that intimacy with
Yeah.
somebody else, and we'll just leave it at that. So, I mean, I had that desire to be with someone else. I think if God forbid something were to happen between Jen and I, okay, I would still want that desire, even if it's not sexual, it's emotional,
Yeah.
to be with somebody else. To share life is too short, How many times I've seen friends of mine, now I'm at the age where my friends are dying.
Yeah.
Okay. And I have a really, really close friend from childhood who a year or two ago lost his wife. I mean,
Oh,
I was the best man at their wedding, and she just within 2 months she got sick, prayed to him, poof, and was dead.
man.
And life is too short. It can happen to any of us. We had just spent time with them in New York, a year or two earlier. And, I don't want to say, okay, when they read Stephen passed away and saying, yeah, he was by himself for all those years.
Yeah.
It's not a projected thing. Everybody knows Steve wants to be out. And, at least having anyone knows me, Dr. Davis doesn't get it as bad, but with the texting at like 7, 8 o'clock at night, sometimes I'm sitting there, and I'll start texting somebody and, and then we end up on the phone and we talk.
Mhm.
I'm not going to, if I find my mind saying, "God, I'm watching TV," I pick up the phone and call somebody.
Yeah.
I don't allow that to bother me.
Yeah.
Connection. We talk about communication and connection, and
Yeah.
we talk about that so much on the show. Heck, we should do a show just on communication and connection.
Yeah, we should.
Yeah, and it's so important, I think, for everybody. So it says what you avoided, and I said it's important. Was there something you intentionally didn't do because you knew it wouldn't help? And yeah, my answer for that is very simple. Feel sorry for myself.
Yeah. I'll agree with you on that. Like where, there were times, definitely times like, during transitional periods of my life where I really struggled with feeling sorry for myself. But, you know, I, for me, I just always, I tend to reach a point where I'm like, okay, I'm done, like moving on, just where
Hmm.
I eventually basically I get tired of me, being sad, or me like just like, okay, the only person that can stop me from being like this is me, so I'm gonna focus on, or whatever. What about you?
See, I had this one that I was saying, feel sorry for myself, but I have this one thing about I saw it in a movie years ago, and I don't know what movie it's from, but it says I cannot repeat an emotion.
Huh.
Okay, and I'm very much that person. Okay, you tell me my mom passed away. Okay, yes, I'm going to be sad, I'm going to cry, and everything else.
Mhm.
But then 2 days later, when I'm at the funeral or the viewing, okay, I'm not going to be sitting there crying.
Yeah.
And people say, well, he's a little cold. No, he's not cold. I'm not going to repeat an emotion. And
Yeah.
it's the same way with, yeah, I'm sorry the relationship broke up and we got divorced. And now I've had to move. I lost my house and everything else. And I'm here in Pennsylvania now instead of my home in Connecticut.
Mhm.
Okay. And all my friends that I made in Connecticut, they're gone. Okay. They're friends, but I mean, they're not there for me anymore. All right. Wow, wow, wow. But now what? Going to sit there
Yeah.
and keep crying about it? Get up and do something about it. I
Yeah.
luckily I had a lot of friends that around me all the time that said, would you like a little wine with that? They say
Yeah.
you're whining here, okay? Would you like a little wine with that? Here, could get you a box of tissues or something, and as terrible as it sounds, it's them basically saying, get over it, dude.
Yeah.
Because while you're sitting there crying about it, life is passing by. Life doesn't stop until you're ready to jump back on that carousel.
Yeah.
So you got to just, you fall off a horse, get up and get back on the horse. You can sit and
True.
go, oh, my back and stuff. You can go see your brother Adam, for an
Yeah.
adjustment, but you got to get back on the horse to go right over to
Definitely.
Adam and get an adjustment.
Absolutely.
So, that's what I avoided was feeling sorry for myself. Now, learning to be open again. What helped you stay open to connection or love again, even after the hurt?
I think when we're hurt, that it's difficult to do. It's difficult to open up again because we're afraid of getting hurt again. But I think for me, uh, I basically just kind of decided, like, you know what? Like if I want healthy relationships, I need to be honest. I need to be as transparent as possible. And you don't have to tell somebody every single thing about you, or just a laundry list of, oh, this one time, or whatever. But, basically being honest with myself about what I wanted, needed, what I was willing to have or not tolerate, all those things.
I think, for myself, hurt. I can't I think it's why we carry what they call luggage into a relationship. I don't want to carry luggage in that, well, the last time I did this, she did A, B, C, and D. But you
Hmm.
know what? I'm not with her, I'm with her.
Right.
Okay, so it's unfair to bring that luggage to her. So it's just like, oh well, okay, close that chapter. Let go again. Try this again, the same way I did the first time. And
Yeah.
but you're much more aware of the signs of what happened the last time that you want to be careful you don't see that again. But I also don't. I was also very careful that make sure that okay, she's not. See, she's doing this for this. No, no, no,
Yeah.
no. She's somebody different. Okay, it's a different person. And each relationship I went into, and I usually had to fight that. Well,
Yeah.
I don't. I'm not your ex.
Right.
That was my honest line ever. That my past boy. I'm not your past boyfriend, or at least not yet. If you keep that up, maybe I will be. But it's we have to watch that. Now, timing and patience. How do you know when you're ready to move forward? Not perfectly, but honestly, when you're okay with yourself.
Yeah.
Is
I agree. I mean, I had gotten to a point, I mean, that's what I would say to anybody, like honestly, and do with this what you will, but give yourself the time to kind of, you know, sort things out, really, because if you can take the time to sort things out, you will move forward feeling better because you have more clarity about, what you want and what you don't want.
and you know what? You have to go into another relationship happy.
Yeah. Yeah, you're
Okay? And if
exactly
you
right.
haven't resolved the issues from your
Mhm.
last relationship, don't go into a new one.
Yeah.
Because you know what? I mean, that's why I said, yeah, I went back to the music. And you see, as a musician, you can put your heart and your feelings into your lyrics.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And when you start, you're even indirectly writing about your past, you're acknowledging everything that took place
Yeah.
and you're seeing it in a different light. And at that point, you need to not be the one that say, well, I did nothing wrong in the relationship, so I'm just ready to move on to the next one. No, there's two sides to every story. And maybe you just need to just take a step back a second or two and just take a look at what went wrong.
Yeah.
Okay, then if it's a matter of I was there night and day, day and night, but she went out and cheated with it's not the case for me, folks, but she went out and cheated with somebody else. Well, okay, and you're ready to go into the next one, but are you really ready to go into the next one? Because are you going to go in watching every single thing? Oh, sure, she wants to go to vacation to Mexico because she's going with a boyfriend.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
That's the thing too, that like one of the things truly something that I really had to take a look at for me just in my own life is it was like, you know what? Like if I can't trust someone, like, like I'm married to my wife because I trust her. You know what I
mhm.
mean? Like I trust her. I'm not going to be in a relationship with someone that I don't feel like I can trust. And that was one of the big changes for me because I would get into relationships and,
Listen, I was in every relationship except when I was really young. Okay, because then I was young. That's all I can say was I was young.
Mhm.
But when I went into serious relationships, I didn't cheat. Like even in my first marriage there,
Yeah.
I had more than enough opportunity to, I mean, really, trust me, when I tell you I had even when things were going sour, I
Mhm.
had opportunities to and did not.
Yeah.
And when I made that decision that I was going to go off into another direction, I basically was man enough to go and say, this is done.
Mhm.
This is over. I'm
Yeah.
not, I'm telling you now, okay, I haven't cheated on you or anything like that, but from this point forward, I'm moving off forward.
Yeah.
And, be honest with the person that you're with, because honesty is what the basis of your relationship is.
It is.
Like you said, if you can't, like if I can't worry that, Jen is out at work today,
Mhm.
what am I supposed to do? We talked about before we went on the air that she had left her ID card here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, heck, if I was that kind of a husband, I'd say, yeah, because she didn't go to work. today,
Huh?
right. Yeah, so she
Yeah.
didn't need that thing. And when I texted her about it, she hasn't texted me back about it because, she's not at work.
Yeah.
She's with, you don't want to go down that rabbit hole. So trust has to be there. So
It does.
now I'm going to stick to one question we had there, number 8, because, we really answered that. I want to go to the last one. What do you want people who are divorced and feeling lonely to hear tonight?
If you were recently divorced, and you're feeling lonely, I would just remind you, like, hey, try and see right now as an opportunity to really evaluate, what you want, what you truly want. And I'm a firm believer that everybody deserves to be happy. So, um, just know that things will get better. I mean, things can improve. You will find a happy relationship again. I mean, that's what I would say.
And only thing I'm going to add to that is stop feeling sorry for yourself.
Yeah.
Because you know what? You could do everything else you said there, but it's got to start with stop feeling sorry for yourself.
Yeah.
The pity party doesn't exist. Okay, it just shouldn't, because when you're having the pity party, then you're asking to be in sorrow.
Yeah.
And you're not moving
True.
forward, you're moving backwards.
Mhm.
You know what? I always said the same thing. You can't change yesterday. You can only change tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's like I can tell you, watch your arm. You're going to knock the glass of milk off the counter. Okay, no, really, Eric, watch your arm because you're going to
Yeah.
knock that milk off the counter. And then you go and you knock the milk off the counter. Well, I can stand there and say, the hell is wrong with you? I freaking told you 4 times. Watch your arm because you're going to, what difference does it make? We got to pick it up and just
Mhm.
clean it up,
Yep.
okay? And just move forward. You can't change that. You can only change we're moving
Yeah.
forward. So, okay, we're at that time of the show again. It's
the lightning round.
yes, it's the lightning round.
Yay.
Now, this is going to be an interesting lightning round because we're both going to answer the questions. Okay, and same rules, okay? Well, now we talked about loneliness in a deep way tonight. So sometimes the simplest way is the simplest answers that says the most. So before we close the segment, here's a quick lightning round. Same 5 questions for both of us. We're going to just be honest, gut level answers. And I'm going to answer first, and then Dr. Davis will give his answer and any summary if needed. Okay, the first one, loneliness taught me that don't live inside your mind.
Yeah. Loneliness taught me that there's a difference between being alone and feeling alone, and that it's a really big difference. And yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. See, and that was for me. Don't live inside that head because otherwise you're playing all the other stuff. Live life.
Yeah.
Is what I wanted. And I didn't pre-read these before, so this is really coming at us right now as we go. That's why I paused, okay? The hardest moment after divorce was picking all my stuff up, moving, and losing my close friends that I had around me.
I would say, number one, dealing with the feelings surrounding it. That was a lot to deal with, but I think the hardest moment was rediscovering who I am. That was probably the toughest part for me, I think.
Third one thing that helped me stay grounded was my dog.
Yeah. Music for me,
Yeah.
or my dog.
See, when I left, the one thing I did take with me was my Sheltie Classic. And, the whole drive from Connecticut to Pennsylvania was with Classic. We talked about stuff. And, when I was anytime I was feeling that down, I played my dog.
Yeah.
That dog was always there, unconditional love. And I
Hmm.
guess that was something important. Number 4, something I wish I had known sooner. Life would move on quickly if I
Yeah.
allowed it to.
All that matters is so something I wish I had known sooner. All that truly matters is that we try our best.
And the last one, if someone is listening and feels lonely tonight, I tell them, get off the computer, go out and do something outside. Go out, and even if you just went to the mall or just went to a store, walk around a grocery store or
Yeah.
Walmart, something, go out and interact with other people.
Yeah.
Get out of your mind and just do something.
Yeah. I would say, if you're feeling super lonely, reach out to a friend. Same thing Steve's saying. Reach out to a friend, talk to somebody. There is no shame in feeling alone. I mean, that's not something that we're doing wrong, or, it's okay to be lonely. And reach out, connect with somebody.
I'm going to tell a little story quickly before we move on with the last part of the show. I remember the day I said, okay, I'm going to stop being angry and stop whining about the past and move on. And it wasn't that long. It was only about 3 days into after I moved. And I got Pennsylvania and I finally got everything set up. And we talk about music, as
Mhm.
music is, our avenue outage. And of course, music has always been, it still is for me. I keep an MP3 player next to the bed, okay? When nothing good on TV, I just listen to music.
Yeah.
Well, I had a nice stereo system that I had. I had these speakers that you could sit right in front of and you could still hear the stereo on the other side. I paid a lot of money for these things, and I sat down, I set everything up, I plugged everything in, and doing that I said, I'm just gonna listen to music. And hit the thing, it didn't go on. It's like, what the heck? I
Yeah.
figured maybe it was the plug or the outlet I was in didn't work. I tried to plug something else in the outlet and it worked. I'm like, what's going on? And I tried all my stuff and it wouldn't work.
Huh.
And I'm thinking, well, maybe it's just the fuse is blowing out or something, banging around when we moved and stuff. And of course, I'm a little electronics person. I took the plate off of my receiver and all the electronics inside of it was all smashed in. And I went and looked at the next thing and it was all destroyed inside and put back together. My speakers, all my
Mhm.
speakers were destroyed. Okay, actually, not this. She didn't destroy the speakers. The things that it connected to in the back, you
Oh
put the
yeah, the
wires on,
wires.
was all destroyed.
Oh.
I flipped. Okay, you want to talk about the culmination of things. I flipped and got on the phone and only was able to leave voicemail. And of course, just out of anger, was like, I'm going to break your
Mhm.
legs. And, well, about an hour later, I come down, I was like, psh. I just blew off the steam, and I calmed
Yeah.
down. And so I just go to bed and knock on the door. I open the door and there's a sheriff at the outside of the door.
Yeah.
And he's like, can I come in? And I'm like, sure, why not? Okay. And he came in and I was like, what's the problem? What? No, actually, I said, what do I owe the honor of your visit?
Yeah.
And he said, did you make a phone? And as soon as he said that, I was like, oh, man. And I was like, yeah, I did. Okay. And he says, I was like, I know. I was like, I'm not trying to justify what I did.
Yeah.
I was like, but look. And I showed him stereo.
Mhm.
And he saw everything. And he goes, oh, what a bitch. Okay, what is this comment? And I was like, yes. And I said, so if you total up what's here, I said we're probably talking about $6,000, $7,000
Mhm.
worth of electronics that's destroyed. And he goes, dude, I get it. He said, but you can't do that. And I was
Yeah.
like, I know. I said, I've already passed that. I was like, I let the anger go out. And I was like, yeah, I realized afterwards probably wasn't a smart thing to do. I was like, but it's gone.
Yeah.
That passed out of me. And what I realized was something that someone had told me a while back. It's material.
Mhm.
You can replace material things.
Sure can.
Okay. And don't get angry over material things. Okay. And, I let him show me that it pissed me off.
Yeah.
Okay, and he left. He was actually laughing when he left. I'm worried about. I was like, dude, do I look like at 10 o'clock at night that I'm going to get into the car and drive 3 hours to Connecticut? And so he goes, no, you don't look like that. I was like, thank you.
Yeah.
He says, but I probably would have done the same thing you did. I was like, I know. I was like, but it wasn't right for either one of us to be doing that. But that was the turning point for me,
Mhm.
where I said, okay, that's enough.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not going to let anything from the past bother me. I am going to move forward, like the stereo. I'll go out and buy a new stereo. I'll replace the components. Speakers, I was lucky enough, I contacted the company and they were over in Germany, believe it or not.
Mhm.
And I explained them by email what was wrong. And they actually sent me two new parts for free. Didn't even charge me shipping.
That's
Okay, I
cool.
guess the guy felt sorry for me and sent me the new parts, and I put it on, and I still have those speakers to this very day. Okay,
Yeah.
it was just something that was done that I'm very much appreciative of. But you have to just let go of that past,
Yeah.
and just move forward. And as I said, stop feeling sorry for yourself. So as we close this part of the conversation, we want to be clear about one thing. Loneliness doesn't mean you failed. Divorce doesn't mean you're broken. And starting over doesn't mean you're behind. What we shared today isn't a roadmap. It's simply a reminder that loneliness doesn't have to be permanent and healing doesn't have to be rushed. Moving forward didn't happen all at once for either one of us.
Yeah.
It happened in little small choices, staying connected, staying honest and open to the possibility that life could be meaningful once again.
Yeah.
So, if you're listening right now and you're in between the in between space, understand that we hope this reminds you that your story is still evolving. So, Dr. Davis, for someone listening right now who realizes that they're lonely but doesn't know where to start, what would be one small realistic first step that they should take?
I mean, I think that, if you're feeling lonely, call somebody, call one of your friends, call someone you know, and just simply tell them, hey, I'm lonely. Just touch base and let somebody know you're lonely. See what happens.
Yeah, definitely don't sit there being lonely
Yeah.
because like you even said, those negative thoughts start
Yeah.
amplifying in your head. And I don't even know if we talk about 988 later
Yeah.
on in the thing here, but if we didn't, we really should. If you're starting to feel lonely and you're starting to feel suicidal or depressed, pick up that phone, dial 988, text
Absolutely.
988. Don't wait, okay? Because your mind is terrible. It's gonna just keep playing on you. So, what role does vulnerability play in rebuilding connection, especially for people who've learned to keep everything inside?
So going back to intimacy, like, in the two circles,
Mhm.
I always like what I say, I always look at intimacy as like into me you see. So it's transparency, and part of transparency is being vulnerable. If I'm not willing to be vulnerable, if I'm not willing to tell Aaron, for example, when I'm struggling, or when I'm hurting, or when I'm sad, or when I need help, like if I'm not willing to um be open with her, she can't help me, and vice versa. So I think that that's one of the hard things about relationships, especially if we've been hurt. But um, if I can take the chance to be vulnerable, or my relationships can be way better.
And I personally believe if you don't, it comes out in anger
Yeah.
later on. So you need to be able to say when you're
Yeah.
not wait till you explode and say, I've been feeling,
Yeah.
talk about it
Exactly.
when you can talk about it. So how can friends or family support someone they suspect is lonely without making them feel judged or even exposing the fact that you know that they're lonely?
Invite them to something, call them, check in, invite them to do something with you, to come over. I mean, really, it's just reaching out. It's not about fixing people's loneliness. It's about providing options that can make it better.
Hmm.
And I mean, and ultimately that's up to them. But make as many options for connection available as you can.
Go to lunch, go to dinner.
Yeah.
Like we used to do, how we stayed in Indiana was we'd have a barbecue
Yeah.
and just, invite a bunch of people over, and let them get out, And we
Mhm.
even had a friend who's married now, but, who never really went out. We used to invite him over. And then we used to invite some of Jen's single friends that she knew over. So
Yeah.
let people mingle and stuff, and that helps. So what one step can someone take tonight that's listening to begin reconnecting?
I would recommend call, like if there's someone you haven't talked to for a while, call them, send an email, mail a letter, just but put your connectors out there to try and connect with others, because um I cannot begin to express as a therapist how important those connections are for our emotional well-being, mental well-being, and even our physical well-being. Like really being connected to other people, other input, other schools of thought. Like that's so important to us as human beings. I'll just leave it at that.
And realize sometimes if someone's texting you and it may be like 10:30, 11 o'clock at night,
Mhm.
and you're thinking, what the hell is it's 11 o'clock at night?
Right.
There's probably a reason why they're doing that.
Yeah.
Okay, it's not that they suddenly forgot what time it is.
Mhm.
Don't ever, close that door and make them feel like, they can't contact you.
Yeah.
My friends can call me any hour of the day and night. Okay, I may grumble a little bit, and that's only because my brain is waking up. Okay, we're the first answer, but yeah, my brain will wake up eventually and we'll talk with you. So loneliness doesn't always look the way we expect it to.
It doesn't always show up as being alone. Sometimes it shows up in silence, in feeling disconnected even when life looks full on the outside. And as we've talked about tonight, for many adults over 40, especially men, loneliness can quietly become part of everyday life.
But you see, loneliness isn't a personal failure. It's a human experience. And more importantly, it's something that can be addressed. Connection doesn't require perfection. That's a good line. Connection doesn't require perfection. It starts with honesty, awareness, and the courage to reach out, even when it might even feel a little uncomfortable.
If something in tonight's conversation resonated with you, let that be a reminder. You are not weak for feeling lonely, and you are not alone in feeling this way. And if you're struggling, or if someone you care about is, help is available. Talk to someone you trust, reach out to a mental health professional, or take that first small step toward connection.
So please do us a huge favor by clicking the like button, hit the subscribe button, even leave us a comment. Okay, you don't understand how important those comments are too, because we'd really love to hear what you think about it. Maybe even give us your story, how you dealt with,
Yeah.
after a breakup of relationship or marriage, how you avoided loneliness, because we'd love to hear it. It's the easiest way to support the channel, and it doesn't cost you anything. But what it does do is help get the episodes indexed better in the algorithms and show up in more people's recommendations. This way, we can help spread the mental health message to more people who may need to hear this. And of course, don't forget the newly redesigned website at yourlifematterspodcast.com. It shows information about Dr. Davis and myself, a place to contact us, a place to feel, even if you feel like you may be a good guest on our show. And of course, a link to purchase some of your, official Your Life Matters, merchandise,
Yeah.
as we have here.
Here on our show, your mental health matters, your happiness matters, and of course, your life matters. Remember that you matter so much more than you may realize.
So again, thank you for being part of the conversation. God bless you, and we hope to see you next time.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for joining us for this week's new episode of the Your Life Matters Show podcast. Please be sure to join us again next Thursday for another great episode with your hosts, Steve Hodgson and psychotherapist Dr. Eric L. Davis. Please remember to subscribe to our channel if you have not already done so, and hit the like button and leave a comment. Your help with this helps us reach a wider audience that may need our help.